Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to tune in. And today I'm joined by radio personality, business owner and college professor, Jon Goehring, who is here to talk about collaboration versus competition in business. Jon has been telling stories for a living since college, and his knowledge of content creation for small businesses is unparalleled. Jon has helped several brands unlock this consistent flow by getting their podcast started and keeping them rolling. Jon does this by providing a full service podcast and audiobook production, handling all the heavy lifting so the creator can stay focused on what matters, and that is their story and their audience. A very, very collaborative thing there, of course. Jon is also the founder of Jon Goehring Voiceovers, where his voiceover work cuts through digital noise and makes creators' messages unmissable. We're kind of in the same boat. You do a lot of different things than I do, but certainly in the content creation stage and understanding the production work that goes in the background. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Jon, thanks a million for joining me today.
Thank you, Gary, for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you. And yeah, that content creation space, that's what we're doing right now, right? We're collaborating and we're creating content. So we got the best of both worlds here.
Yeah, exactly that. So let's start with your journey thus far. I really enjoyed the pre-chats that we had prior to recording, and I'm interested for you to be able to share your story with the audience, and specifically what sparked your passion for helping other businesses do what they need to do.
Well, I started with a passion for media, and in high school and getting into college, I really wanted to become a newspaper writer because I would be one of those strange kids who still read the newspaper, which I think do kids even know what a newspaper is right now? I don't know. But like, that's what started my journey into media. But I quickly realized that industry wasn't quite the industry to put all of my eggs in that basket, so to speak. So when my life actually changed was when I walked into the college radio station. That's when I was like, whoa, now this is fun. We played music. We had personalities on the air between the music. I did sports broadcasting too. I broadcasted the football games for my little local college here, and it was just a blast. And that's when I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I got into radio, I interned, and then I worked full-time here in the Rochester, New York area in radio. And that was a blast for a little while until I realized that the radio industry was following the newspaper industry. It was just a few years or maybe decades behind, and a whole bunch of layoffs were happening. Thankfully, I wasn't one of them. I guess I beat the layoff to the punch because I said, you know what? I don't want to live with this stress every day of, am I going to have a job tomorrow? I didn't like that. And through the mentorship of some others, I realized that the best security is to have your own business. And I truly believe that to this day, that no matter what kind of industry you're in, if you want to be really secure, have multiple sources of income, not just that one full-time job. So that's when I branched off on my own. I got into the very competitive world of voiceover because of all the radio people who were leaving radio or getting laid off from radio. What do you naturally do when you get laid off from radio, right? You got one of these things hanging out at home, may as well use it, right? I got the voice and I got the equipment. I'm going to try to become the voiceover actor. And so that industry became extremely saturated. I felt like I had to compete and be better than everybody else. And that's exactly what I tried to do for my first couple of years in it, was try to be everything to everyone. I mean, Gary, if you were looking for a 50-year-old woman to voice a audiobook, I would raise my hand.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but that was the mindset I had. It was a very scarcity focused mindset. So what I realized is that I needed to change my approach to business. And that's when things really clicked, is when I went from competition to the mindset of collaboration.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's almost everything there. We could spend about 3 hours on each topic that you raised there, just in terms of the media, the media evolution, and then getting to the business mindset, and then, really doing that collaboration. I was looking at your website in preparation for this, and I see you have some other niche actors in there to say, depending on what you're looking for, this is the person. You can look at the person if you need to, and this is where they specialize. And it brought up, I met with a colleague of mine, oh, what would that be, last week now, and we were talking about coaching in general terms,
Yeah.
and she was asking me what type and style of coaching I do, and I said, it's primarily leadership coaching, and tell me a bit more about that. I explained it. She says, that's what everyone says,
Mm.
and I said, I get it. My challenge that I have here is, being all things to all people, is when I was managing projects full time for a living, I would have debates in the classroom. We'll get to talk about the classroom in a wee bit here, I'm sure. I would have debates in the classroom saying, I can manage any project in any industry, in any geographic country in the
Mm.
world. As long as I have the right type and style of resources accessible to me, I can manage any project. And some people were like, hell no, you couldn't manage. You don't have any experience in this. You wouldn't be able to call BS on that. Those sorts of things. And I says, you're missing the point of what project management is. I've kind of brought that mentality over to coaching, where I say I can coach anyone about any topic ever. If you're talking about the truest, purest sense of coaching, I can coach anyone for anything. The challenge is it becomes confusing for other people, because they're saying, what type and style of coach are you? And then I feel like a sleazy salesman because I'm saying, what do you need? I've got what you need.
And
And that
got it.
sounds like, the 55-year-old woman, audiobook narrator and such. So that there is absolute genuine, certainly comparability between the journeys, of course, and genuine collaboration and communication clarity to be able to say, if this is what you're looking for, Jon is your guy. You go to see Jon, and Jon will help you. If you're looking for something else, that's actually not Jon. Jon will be able to direct you to where it is, rather than this early stage. Bring everything on. I'm sure I can take it on. So putting that collaborative you know title on top of that is a really good way to frame it. You're not restricting opportunities to
Yeah.
say, oh, what if someone comes and asks? I probably could help them out with that. What you're really saying is, this is what you can rely on me for. And if you come to me, we will have a fabulous experience. You'll get exactly what you need, all in the spirit of collaboration between your needs, my expertise, and my ability to deliver. So as I say all this stuff out loud, it's almost like we're kindred spirits in terms of that clarity that is required to be able to get the opportunities for collaboration in the future.
Mhm. Yes, and I think it goes really deep too to mindset. Ultimately, business mindset is so huge, and so many people, including myself when I started out, and I'm still dealing with this to this day. I think we're always a work in progress. We suffer from the scarcity mindset, and
Yeah.
that mindset is that there's only so much to go around, and I have to compete for every little bit I have.
Yeah.
And this scarcity mindset can be really detrimental because it closes us off to other people. In the world of voiceover, it also, that desperation also, whether we like it or not, or even realize it, comes through in our auditions because we're desperate to get this work. We know somewhere deep down that we're not the best natural fit, but we don't care. We're desperate. And that's a scarcity mindset. So flipping that and doing some work and reading a book by the great Carol Dweck, who talks about mindset, flipping that to an abundance mindset makes us realize that I'm going to be okay if I don't get this job that I'm auditioning for,
Yeah.
and that as long as I put in the work, it's going to work out. It's kind of like forcing a square peg into a round hole versus just doing your best and letting it be, because it does more often than not work out.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I have the conversations with the undergrad students at the University of Calgary here, essentially in terms of the interview process and preparing for the interview process, understanding how prepared, how much of a fit you are, understanding your strengths, understanding your skills that you've built on those strengths, and figuring out what that looks like. And then doing the biggest favor that you can do for yourself is hypothesizing the outcome. Visualizing and saying the outcome is, at the highest level, I get the job or I don't get the job. There's some other things that might happen as well. So how is it going to feel if you don't get the job? And how is it going to feel if you do get the job? And, like literally, genuinely spending the time doing that, because I think that then helps with the desperation. It helps with your preparation. It helps with your presence in the interview process and your ability to be able to communicate properly with people, to say, I'm here, folks. I'm going to just cards on the table. I really, really want this job, and I'm going to tell you why. And you can have that open conversation because you've done the pre-work. But a lot of times when it becomes the scarcity mindset, people push that stuff down. I don't want to think about that until I have to think about that. But as you said, absolutely, it's leaking out of every pore and every interaction, the desperation. And by the way, I've been there in the past, in the early stages of my career and such. And it's one of these things. Could you imagine truly, and this is the kind of hypothesis that I give to the students, could you imagine truly chasing a job that you're not a fit for, that you're not a fit for, that you would willingly drop like a stone if at some point between now and then delivery time, whatever that looks like on the job, that another better opportunity that's more of a fit, that's with your ideal client, that's been your dream and since you were a kid or whatever that looks like, how good are you going to be at that job? How destructive could that be for your reputation, for your confidence, for your ability to know and understand this is the right type and style of industry for me? I've just selected the wrong thing for right now, or been selected for the wrong thing right now. So when I'm saying this visualization, when they have that opportunity to say, I'm going to be bummed out or I'm going to be okay because I was fishing more than anything else, we then can take that a step further and say, just think about what's going to happen when you get this job. Is it actually going to be everything that you think? How would I know? Do you know what you could do some research. You could do some work up front to give yourself the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself in the meeting. And it's almost bringing it back to the whole theme of this podcast, but such interesting pre-work that you can do to say, getting this job might feel like an absolutely brilliant move because you get to pay the bills. It could have longer term catastrophic consequences for you in terms of your ability to be able to do that from a more longer term perspective.
Yes. And you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, right? When you're going into a job. And I also think this is why, like, cold email, all these different sales tactics that I've tried, I'll admit, I think that's why they just aren't that effective anymore. I mean, we are built on building relationships with trust. And that's something that through things like door-to-door sales or cold email or cold messaging on social media, I think we smell that now. I think that just screams desperation. And let's be honest, when you're reaching out to 1,000 people, trying to get 5 people to respond and maybe 1 person to sign up to become a client, that is screaming desperation. That is like a Hail Mary attempt. And I don't think people like that anymore. So I think that's all part of the scarcity versus abundance and collaboration and competition as well.
Yeah, definitely. Through training that I'm continuing to do right now, and I don't think I'll end it. It's basically around marketing and communications and such like that, and sales, of course. And there is that, your ideal client is you from some point in your past where you can say, I've been there. I can help you. I'm from a coaching and self-development, self-education perspective. And then we start talking about marketing, and then we start talking about essentially cold calls and sale calls and things like that. And my, I wouldn't say argument, my resistance somewhat is, if my personal ideal client is me from 6 months ago to 25 years ago, not one of those versions of younger Gary liked a cold call. Not one of those liked the flyers that come through the post. Not one of those likes the cold call email. I'm actually dealing with one literally right now that started off kind of personable, and now it's just so cliche. But the interesting thing is there is no unsubscribe button, so then I have to engage with the person to say, stop, messaging
Yes.
me. You know, if I was interested, I would have replied before now, and now you're getting annoying. So it's almost this balancing act to get that opportunity to truly collaborate with people, to say, like, what would actually work the most for me? And really, truly analyzing that. Right, okay, that's cool. Am I a fair representation of the demographic of ideal client or clients that I'm trying to attract? Yes or no? I'm not 100% sure. If so, how best to go about that? You know, and the reason I say that, and I'm smiling when I say that, when you had initially reached out, you know, I get a lot of people, you know, asking to come on. I'm very fortunate to get a lot of people to ask to come on the podcast. And so then it's very, very difficult with just words on a screen to be able to say, is this person going to be a good fit? Are we going to be good to work together? And is this an interesting topic that I think the audience would benefit from? And then you followed it up very quickly with a voice note.
Mhm.
And I thought it was so unique. We talked about this on the pre-interview, and I thought it was just such a unique way to do it, because you've just added a human being into the
Yes.
process, and you've just said, hey, listen, I'm a real guy, and I would, you know, I love what you're doing. I'd love to be considered. Now you've got my interest, and I'm thinking that's effort, and that's someone who's thinking and who's saying, this is natural for me. I didn't know at the time that you had such a media background, but you caught the interest of
Yes.
me, and it was perfect. And then, yeah, of course, as soon as we got together, I knew that it was going to be a great conversation. So it's that balancing act between doing what you're intended to do, which is to sell your services, to sell your offerings, but also be genuinely authentic to
Mhm.
yourself. And sometimes that can get a wee bit lost in the process.
Yeah, I don't think we get enough of those personalized messages. I don't think we get enough personalized videos. That's something I've started to do too, is when it's somebody's birthday, as cliche as it sounds, my mother-in-law's birthday. I'm pulling out my phone and I'm saying, "Hey, mother-in-law, happy birthday to you. I love you," and sending
Yeah,
that out. It just hits so much better than just a happy birthday text message that we get all the time. It's just
yeah,
one little example of that. And then also it's meeting the person where they are, right? So when it comes to podcasting, well, what are we doing? We're talking, we're looking at each other, we're having this person to person conversation. Why would I write to you and
yeah,
say, "Hey, Gary," and write a paragraph about me showcasing how great of a writer I am, maybe, or how great of a. If I'm trying to sell somebody my writing services, yes, you should write to them. But if you're
yeah,
trying to connect with somebody on a deeper, more emotional level, especially when it comes to me, who is a media person, I'm not the best writer in the world. I'm a video and audio person.
yeah.
I should be consistent with that and keep that brand and communicate that way. So I think that's kind of the two sides of it. One, like you said, the authenticity, and two, whatever it is that you do, meet the person where they are. Meet the person in the format they want to be communicated with, and what best shows your abilities in that communication. So whether that be writing, a voice note, a video message, any of those things, I think that's so important because it gives you a little bit of a taste, almost like a preview. Like, okay, well, here's what this guy will look like. All right, he's not
Yeah.
going to be recording from his basement, or in
Yeah.
his bathroom, with a bathrobe on. Like, he's professional and has that. So it gives you a little sample and a little taste. So that's just a thing that I've started doing, and I've actually found a lot of success. I recently did an A/B test on it too to see how people responded for a different thing, not for podcast guesting, but for a different thing that I reached out to people for. And I just sent a written message on one, I sent a video message on another, and the video message got 3 times more replies.
Wow.
So it really is about 60 something percent to about 20%. So it really is a powerful tool.
It definitely is. And as you say, I mean, one of the real reasons that I switched to video, my earlier podcasts were all audio, was because audio was it was where I started in podcasting for a different
Mhm.
podcast that I do for my team that I love from back home, Glasgow Rangers. Quick shout out to the team. And I was just so used to it. And then when video became, you know, fairly, what would I say, commonplace in terms of, if you want true or deeper connection, people need to see it.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, oh, it's another thing to do. Now I'm kind of fortunate. This is as good and as bad as it gets. You know, this is this is just
I'm
my
the same
face,
way.
and that's what it is. So there's no like bad hair day or anything like that. I purposely keep my background very plain. I don't want there to be any distractions. I want the conversation to be the actual focal point of that. But then I started to get in my head a wee bit to say, like, nobody wants to see this, and it's a wee bit more hassle, and I don't really know what I'm doing, quite frankly, in terms of video production. Thankfully, there's wonderful tools out there such as Riverside, which I use to make it the process very easy. But when I started to break it down, essentially like a pros and cons list, I didn't actually do that, but what would I be getting and what would I be giving up was my main thing. And one thing that I thought was really powerful for me, John, was sometimes the very odd occasion if I go to meet a new client or anyone new actually in my life, they're somewhat surprised by my accent. And they're somewhat surprised by my appearance and such. So it takes the element of surprise away. I used the word distractions just a wee while ago. That's exactly what it is. I don't want you to be distracted by, oh, I thought he would be taller. I'm 5'6". I'm just a wee guy. So I thought you would have more hair. I thought you would have, you get to see. So that if someone then gets to consume it and say, I'm still interested, after all these distractions or obstructions that I've put in their way, then we're actually having a proper conversation when we're supposed to be having a proper conversation. That's how powerful it is.
Yes. Oh, I couldn't agree more. And as somebody in that height ballpark as well, and with what they say, a face for radio, I'm totally with you on that hesitancy of like, yeah, the voice. Okay, I can get behind putting the voice out there, but the face, you want me to what?
Yeah.
Uh, but it's authenticity. We're not all supposed to look the same, right?
Yeah.
That's what people want. People are curious. When you're listening to a podcast, at least when I listen to podcasts, I feel a connection with the person. And if I don't know what they look like, I have a picture of what they look like in my head.
Yeah.
How cool is it to actually now get to see what each other looks like and not have to imagine that picture?
Yeah.
We're usually disappointed when we see, right? But
Yeah.
it's the reality of it.
Yeah, it truly is. So I know that I've been following a lot of work that you've been putting out there on LinkedIn. I really love your presence there and the messaging that you're getting out in terms of your podcasting. The side or one of the streams of your business in terms of your podcasting work. How is that morphed and evolved? I mentioned it briefly on your bio, of course, that you could provide a full suite of services to someone to concentrate on what they're trying to do, which is get the message out there. How did that come about? How's it going? What type and style of clients are you working with?
Well, the podcasting world has really taken off. And what it's become is not just an audio source, but like what we were just talking about, a video source and really the potential for a content creation engine. So people ask me, why should I have a podcast? And I don't say because you really have to be on Apple Podcasts. Everybody is. What I do say is that it has the opportunity to either supplement or fully replace the content that you're putting out there. A lot of people they labor over putting out content on a weekly or daily or 4 times a week basis. And what they don't realize is that a podcast can easily create content for your entire content calendar. A podcast episode, not only on audio, but on video shorts from that episode, graphics with quotes on it from that episode. How about a blog post created from that episode? There's endless possibilities. So that's what I help podcasters do is take their podcast or start a podcast and yes, make it good for that full 30, 45 minutes, hour, whatever it is, episode, and make that the highest quality it can be. But also look at it realistically, saying that the majority of my audience is not going to consume this entire episode. How
Yeah.
can I take this 1 hour of my time that I spent recording and turn it into a content engine a well that never dries up of content? And that's what I help people do. The podcasting world definitely started as more just that, hey, I got a podcast. This is cool. I talk to people once a week. I put out an episode. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow me.
Yeah.
And now everybody's done it. So nobody's liking and subscribing and following everyone. And if they are, it's just a vanity metric. So
Yeah.
at this point, with over 4 million podcasts out there, we've gotten a little saturated, but less than half of those podcasts are active. Less than half of them even made it to 10 episodes, and even more like 10% of them release something weekly. So to become one of those about 400,000 podcasts that are actually active is like becoming one of the first websites on the internet. It's like having that opportunity to share your voice, amplify your message through something like a podcast, and to use that as a total content creation engine. So I added that to my business when I realized the power of podcasting. And actually, at first, I didn't add it right away to my business as a service, but I explored it. I explored being on other people's podcasts. I've always loved listening to shows. I listen to several shows religiously. My car is a podcast playing machine. It doesn't just drive, it plays podcasts. So that's something I really kind of got into the industry and had a passion for it. Attended some podcast seminars too. And that's when I realized, okay, it's time for me to add this because I'm so passionate about this. And let's face it, it's also still the future. I don't think we've reached the peak of podcasting yet.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's so interesting thinking about the work that goes on in the background, the ability to repurpose content 100% with you there, the ability to say it's kind of a one and done, we can take this and make it a whole bunch of different things. I was explaining to my love last night just kind of where things are at in terms of the podcast recording, and she'd said, what happens next? And I says, oh well, then I put it here, and then I'll use some of that for this part, and I'll use a wee bit of that for that, and that and that and that. And as I was explaining the steps, excuse me, to get organized for one episode, it's a lot of work. It really is. And that's why, creators need people like you to be able to say, I can help you with that. And then you can do the stuff that you're good at, so I'm quite fast getting to the point of saying, I've learned as much about the production process as I want to learn. Now I just want to speak and do it. It's not quite there yet, but it's great to know that there are services out there such as that can take that full suite and really slice and dice it. So the reason I mention that is that I'll then have a conversation. What piqued my interest was when you said not everyone's going to consume the full episode, but they might consume bits and parts of it, depending on where else you're putting it. And I'll talk to people that will say, "Oh yeah, I didn't bother listening to that one. That one didn't sound very interesting." Or I got about 5 minutes in, and then I think I got distracted. I can't even remember what happened. And and this is people close to me, so I can have a different type and style of conversation with them. I'm saying, "Oh, don't mind me. Don't mind me on the hours and hours and expense and time and effort and toil that it took for me to produce that." But I do that. There's times, even with the ones that I religiously follow, if I'm kind of like, oh, I'm not sure of that guest today, or it's not really a topic that's burning for me for right now, I'll go listen to something else. Yeah. So I'm in that realization phase that what I do to other people, I maybe should be a bit more considered about it. But then I'm thinking, she's got 3 million followers. It doesn't really matter. Of course it matters. If I'm listening, I should be listening, and if I'm not listening, not from a guilt metrics perspective, but the production process is very difficult, I guess is what I'm saying, very time consuming. So if you have a podcaster out there that's asking for some help or support, go and provide some help and support and help them, do what they're trying to do, which is of course spread the word there. So I admire what you're doing, and I applaud the service that you're providing as well. In terms of your work in academia, how did that come about, and how is that going? I know we chatted just before it. You're right in the midst today of semester end and such, so a very busy time. But in general terms, how did that come about for you?
Oh, it's a funny story because I never would have. I would have laughed at you if you told me while I was in college, oh, yeah, you're going to teach one of these classes someday. What? Yeah. No, that's a joke. Because I wasn't the super academic kind, right? And so ended up starting my career, starting my own business a couple of years in, right around the time that I kind of had the epiphany that I need to be collaborating more than just competing. I got a call from an old professor of mine who's a department chair at the college that I did my undergrad at, and she said, hey, we're looking for an adjunct professor for a class that apparently I don't know if nobody wants to teach it or they're desperate or what, but they called me and I was like, okay, well I have my master's degree, so I have the qualifications. And I have a business, and they're really looking for somebody with that real world experience, not someone that is from the academic background, but somebody with the real world experience. So I said, uh, no, this isn't me. I'm not what are you talking about? I have zero experience with teaching or anything. So she said, well, I just would just consider it, just think about it for a little bit. And I said, okay. So then after considering it a little bit, I realized something that I really strongly believe, and to this day, I strongly believe. And this is what makes the best version of me, I believe, and the best version of anyone. And that is that if you're not stepping outside of your comfort zone, you're not growing. And then I just, that voice continually repeated in my head. I listen to a lot of podcasts that talk about that. I know that truth deep inside of me, yet our comfort zones are our comfort zones for a reason, right?
Yeah.
They're comfortable and we don't want to step outside of them. And that was my comfort zone speaking. Jon, you just talking to a microphone to an audience of 0 all day. Why don't we just keep it that way? You don't want to deal with 18-year-olds. And then I realized, well, it would be outside of my comfort zone, wouldn't it be? And it would be helping them out because they're really in a pinch looking for somebody. So that was 2.5 years ago, and I'm still doing it. So it worked out. And I won't say that I'm natural at it or that I'm even really any good at it. But it's been something that's been a learning experience for me. It's definitely helped my public speaking skills. It's helped my interpersonal skills. It's helped me become a person who can say no, who can be a little bit more disciplined. Not that I run an iron fist in the class or anything, but students we've talked about this in the past, Gary. Students will come up to me, as we talked today, last class semester, say, I know I haven't done anything all semester, but like, can I somehow pass? And old me the people pleasing side of me that still is there, that would say, yes, you know what? We're going to figure out a way to help you pass. It's just not possible. And some things in life we have to understand, that we have to learn how to say no. We have to learn how to be, I guess, the bad guy, even when they've done it to themselves. Feeling like the bad guy, we have to be okay with that feeling. So just little things like that, not so much the teaching side of it, but certain practices that I know you've learned too throughout your teaching career, right? Have been really beneficial to me. And I'm not going to be a full-time professor at any point, but to have that experience is a nice, solid way to step outside of my comfort zone and gain confidence, because I have a skill now that I didn't think I would ever have.
Exactly. And create impact as well. That's exactly what you're doing.
Oh, that's a huge one too. I mean, that's a great point. I don't know what it is in our brains or our bodies, if it's the dopamine release or what it is, but there's just something so fulfilling about giving back to the next generation. And I mean, these kids are only like not even 10 years younger than me, but I feel like I'm further along on the journey, having been through it. And you ever say to yourself, wow, if only I knew that when I was 18.
Yeah.
I say that to myself all the time. I was just thinking today, wow, how my perspective has changed since I was 18. Yeah. It's just mind-boggling to me. Well, this is your opportunity, I told myself, to say that to the person who is in exactly your shoes, in the same major, in the same class you took 9 years ago. It's your opportunity to tell them what you wish you could have told yourself. So that, to me, you're right. It's the impact. That's the most fulfilling thing.
100%. Yeah, my son Leo and I have conversations regularly where I'll say, listen, in life, there are certain lessons you need to learn on your own, and you will, to the point of the student coming up at the end and saying, let's make this work. You would be unkind to that student to say, yeah, sure, let's do that. Like, I know that it stings right now, but longer term, this is going to help you.
It's true.
And it's the same for Leo. I'll say to him, but also there are things that you don't need to go through what I went through. So when I'm speaking, it would be great if you listened just a little bit deeper so that you can kind of go, tell me that again, and figure it out. He's in the realm now of getting a car and having a girlfriend and things like that. And I'm saying
Mhm.
these are life-changing things that you never had to think about before. Car maintenance and how to pay for the gas and you know what happens if it breaks down. Another human being intertwined with your life. You never had to think about that before. And they have their own thing going on, their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own desires, their own preferences and such like that. That's a lot to take in. So it's okay to kind of go, oh, wait a minute, this is a lot here. And I do a version of what you were describing there in my undergraduate classes too, is to give them those world experiences and to say, you know, almost literally, here's what I wish I knew when I was 18, like to your example
Right.
there. And it's just it's such a gift, and it's such a wonderful opportunity to hopefully resonate with someone, because my typical line is, at some point in the future, you might not heed this lesson for right now, but at some point in the future, you're 25 years old, you're in a meeting, you're interviewing someone else, whatever it is, something's going to happen and you're going to say, Gary told me that. And I remember at the time kind of going, that seems like nonsense. I don't understand why you would even mention that. This is it. This is that moment. And I said, see, when that happens, I will still be active on LinkedIn and I'll still be hopefully around doing what I'm doing. Please message me and say, oh my God, see that thing you said 7 years ago? You actually nailed it. Told you. Have you got your notes from the other classes? There's a lot of gems and nuggets in there too. You know, I heard the thing. You can maybe use this in your class if you haven't already. And it was actually from a comedian, and it was more along the lines of how stupid men are, and how women have to put up with the stupidity and stuff. And she was so funny, and it was all kind of true as well. And
Yeah.
she said, ladies, you need to listen to this. I wish I had a me when I was you. That
Ooh,
brilliant, isn't it?
it's so good and
Yeah,
so true, man. Wow.
yeah,
And then yeah, I've had those moments even recently where I'm like, so and so told me, or even dad told me,
yeah,
mom told me. And I'm really paranoid about how my lawn is way too long right now because it's been raining. Dad told me I would care about that someday.
yeah,
That's on a more minor level, but still, it is amazing when we listen to, and a lot of times I think we unfortunately have a narrative in culture. Youth is glorified, youth and innocence and all of that kind of thing. Whereas the boomer generation or the wisdom of the older people are just tossed to the side because they're out of date, out of touch, out
yeah.
of style, whatever. But there's so much value in that too that I think we're missing out on with our cultural narrative that youth is what we should be striving for.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. This has been a fabulous conversation. I've got a feeling this isn't going to be the only time that we get together on a podcast, John. So, as you know, this is called The Best You. And what is one regular practice that John employs to give you the best opportunity to be the best version of yourself?
I make a promise to myself every day and I keep that promise. It's as simple as that. I learned this from the Ed Milet show, who
Right.
he's a big personal development, and
Yeah.
he's talking about self confidence. And I
Yeah.
was somebody throughout high school. I was a little shyer. I was never the alpha male athlete, that kind of type. I was more of the everybody likes me, but nobody really knows me. Nobody hates me, but I'm not popular either because I'm just kind of like very neutral and sitting in the corner. And a lot of that came from not having a lot of self-confidence.
Right.
And I know a lot of people at that age, a lot of kids that age struggle with that.
Mm.
And then I took that into college with me. And then I worked in an industry where self-confidence was paramount.
Yeah.
And so I realized I need self-confidence if I'm going to thrive in the industry I'm in. That doesn't mean cockiness. It doesn't mean, I think people confuse, oh, you're so self-confident. That means you're cocky or arrogant. That's not what I mean. But self-confidence, as Ed Milet puts it, which I think is the best definition of self-confidence that I have ever come across, and I believe it to this day, is that it's a reputation that you build with yourself. So what makes the best me is daily doing things that build that reputation with myself.
Yeah.
And so that could be as simple as doing 100 push-ups. I have promised to myself that for every day, I started this on September 1st of last year, every day I'm going to do 100 push-ups a day. Something
Yeah.
simple. I've done 100 push-ups every single day since September 1st. I feel more confident. No, my biceps aren't all of a sudden 10 inches big. That doesn't work that way, right? But it's still a promise that I've made and kept to myself. So what promises can you make to yourself today? Maybe it's making that extra call or just being present at dinner with your loved one. It could be anything. But when you start stacking those wins, stacking those promises that you make to yourself, it could be recording a podcast episode every week. It's what I talk about with my clients all the time.
Yeah.
What can we promise that we're going to do to keep this content creation engine going? Whatever it is in your life, when you start doing that, I started to realize that I've become a more confident person because I trust myself more.
Yeah.
Right? I have more of a reputation with, okay, this guy follows through. Just like you trust anybody else who's built a reputation with you. I believe we have that kind of relationship with ourselves too. So the best me is making and keeping promises to myself.
That's absolutely dynamite. And just to embellish on that a little bit more, when do you do that? Is that a practice for the morning, for the night before? How does that typically manifest itself into your day?
Every morning I will make that promise, and then I will give myself until the evening to keep it.
Yeah.
And so that's taken on a life of its own because I'm a procrastinator, as like I'm sure we all are. People are like, I'm such a procrastinator. I'm like, welcome to the human race, right? Like, I don't know anybody who's not a procrastinator. So I would, do my 100 push-ups at 10 p.m. before bed, or make my last sales call at 6:30 when the person's like, why are you interrupting my dinner? Right? Now I've learned to be more proactive with it. So it is a daily practice. It's something that I practice every single morning. I actually pray every single morning as I'm a person of faith. And then I make that promise to myself. And then by the end of the day, I take inventory. Did I keep that? And I better have said yes, because I'm holding myself accountable to it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I love that. That's so profound. Wonderful. Jon, before I let you go, where can people find out more about you?
JonathanGoehring.com, which is JONATHAN. It's GOEHRING. JonathanGoehring.com is the best way to learn more. But if you'd like to connect, I am more than happy to connect on LinkedIn. I love just hearing about other people's stories. Just Jon Goehring on LinkedIn is the best way to connect. And let's start a conversation, especially if you're looking for any podcast production or any content creation needs. Happy to talk about that and point you in the right direction. But otherwise, even if not, I'm happy to have a conversation and talk about ways we can support each other.
I love it. This has been a magnificent conversation. Thank you very, very much for your time, Jon.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a blast.